Hi, my name is Ken Rasmussen. I wrote the Microbiome prescription website, and this last week I had a conversation with some of the founders of a medical clinic that specializes in dealing with long COVID. Now, after that conversation, I made a recap of some notes from it. Some of it was aspects of educating MDs on some of the realities of dealing with the microbiome. Why do I say educate MDs? Well, very simple. There's been a tremendous number of studies over the last 5 years. Most MDs had their training more than 5 years ago, and they did not get much training on the use of the microbiome. Well, I'm not a medical type. I'm basically a gifted individual, especially in the area of mathematics, operations, research. Was in a STEM program in high school, so I had a lot of talks and presentations by MDs and research people from the local universities. And also I was a general science teacher for a fair number of years. So I do have a general knowledge, and once going to microbiome, I had to expand my knowledge tremendously. So this talk is going to focus on long COVID for MDs. It also applies to ME/CFS, and I'm going to look at the microbiome aspect of long COVID. Why? Because, well, it seems to work. And most of the other investigations have not gotten much traction. So far, the microbiome, my experience dealing with people who have long COVID, has had very, very good traction. Okay, so that is what this talk about. It may be end up being very long. I'm trying to keep it simple and non-technical, although there's a lot of technicalities available. So the first thing is a quick recap. First, I'm going to talk about the microbiome challenges, and if you aren't aware of the technology, you will make a bunch of very incorrect assumptions, which probably result in very poor success using the microbiome. Then we talk about associations of long COVID with aspects of the microbiome. Then we look at one artificial intelligence approach, or actually a couple of bits and pieces of how we can use that to come up with suggestions for treating a person with long COVID or ME/CFS. Then we go over and do a demo visual examples of how we can do it or how you can do it yourself. And then final tips and takeaways at the end. So let's get into it. And the first thing is the microbiome challenge. There is a major disconnect between what people expect from microbiome tests and the realities of the test. On the right, I have a quote from the National Institute of Standard Technology, basically saying, hey, give me the same data, and you'll get 97 different answers from the identical same data. In other words, the data isn't definitive. It's far from definitive. When you go and measure cholesterol, you get a definitive measure. Here, you don't. Depending on how the lab does it, you get 97 different answers, and the key thing is there is no standard out there. Everything is literally the Wild West. Most MDs will naively assume that the tests are accurate. They are for how they were done, but they are not necessarily accurate how the next test over is done on the identical same data. And how the test determines what bacteria you have there is not by looking at a microbiome. It's taking the RNA fragments, applying it through a complicated hunk of software, who then attempts to do matching. I would simply refer to the software as AI, artificial intelligence, because that's what it's very close to being. A different AI pipeline will give you a different answers. And I had that well demonstrated to me 5-6 years ago, which ended up forcing me to understand exactly what was going on. Fortunately, my background in mathematics and artificial intelligence made it was an easy learn to what the reality was and to respond to it. And what I did was when Ubiome went out of business, I took a sample I had from them, and which was the digital version of the sample. In other words, it went through a testing machine, creates the RNA, and now you have a fixed, defined, absolute certain piece of digital data. And now I'll pass that over to a variety of companies: Cosmos ID, Ubiome, Ombre, Biomosite, Sequential Biotech. So there's a ton of different companies which they had at that time made available automatic translation of FASTQ files to a list of bacteria. So I shipped a few. My initial expectation was the results should come out very close. Okay, slap in the face, number one. The number of bacteria identified by each of the labs varied greatly. Low level was just 253, high level was 632. They were given the same digital data file, not a different sample which was sampled differently from the stool, but the actual single identical fixed digital data file, and they got whoppingly big differences. And for any individual bacteria like Nitrobacillus, the numbers were all over the place. Some cases, I think 15% of my sample was one particular bacteria. Another said 1%. Another one said none. So, one response could be saying, well, this data is inaccurate, we'll wait until it resolves. That's a possibility, but that's giving up the potential of the microbiome. What it makes it is more challenging to use, and you need a different set of expertise for it. Now, here's where the finding even gets worse. So once digital sample, depending on which labs, will give me different results. Now, when I go over and read microbiome studies from PubMed, many of the hundreds, in fact thousands at this point in time. I know I've used 10,000, which I have actually read or scanned parts of. And each one of them used a different AI, which in some cases would account why one study reports a bacterial increase and the next one says it found nothing significantly different. Or worse yet, it found it went the opposite direction. Why? Because the AIs are different, which is absolutely big pain point, which makes using the data not impossible, it just makes it challenging. In general, in science and labs, we want replication of results to happen. Well, replication will happen if you use identical same AI. If you use a different AI, it will not happen. So general replication is generally not there. You are not going to do it. Okay, so this is the problem. This is the challenge. It is not an unsolvable problem. It is just not a simple solvable problem. So where do we go next? The next thing is to understand the AI. And what I have in front of you on the right is my own personal DNA. Same identical file, same digital file processed through 3 different online services. Bacteria is like people. In fact, there are more bacterial cells in your microbiome than you have cells in the body. And like human bacteria, they transfer genes and they transfer RNA, which means there's no clear, pure, unique bacteria. If you go to a different part of the world, which has had very little microbiome studies done, you will find bacteria existing there which you cannot identify at a species level because it doesn't match to any of the species identified over in your part of the world. And when we go to do the matching, here's the key thing. We are matching against different reference profiles and only doing slightly different AI parameters to determine how we match. We have different collections involved. So as you can see on the right, here is one sample showing my 74% Sweden, Denmark, 20% Norway, Germanic, Iceland, a small amount. But then another site says I am 87%. Well, Wait a minute, Scandinavian is Sweden and Denmark, so that is 94%. Wait a minute, I'm only 87%. So we have a discrepancy here, a difference of numbers. We look up above and get, wait a minute, I don't see any Irish or British here. I have 4% here. German, I'm only 3% here. I'm 6% here. What do you mean? The problem is reference sets and how the processing is done. And down below, I have a last one coming from MyHeritage, which shows where I have strong DNA matches to samples from archaeology. So you can see where I have lots of matches. And as you can see, I have a ton of matches in England, which means that my British and Irish one is probably good. The fact that they totally missed it over here comes from the algorithm. So the data is the same for both my DNA going to these 3 different sites, and it's the same thing going for FASTQ going into some sort of AI processing. So it is pattern matching of a sort, not precise, and you will get different results depending on what algorithms you're using. Using the human DNA example is probably the easiest for people to understand. Bacteria in the gut is not static, frozen in time, everlasting. It is dynamic, it's change. We have many studies where we have seen within literally days genes being transferred from one bacteria species to a different one to convey, for example, antibiotic resistance. So we have the same thing as in the population. And on the right, in terms of general group, that is roughly trying to describe thalamus. Now, if you go to individual parts of each of those countries, or even which parish, or which city, or which town, or which street, you will get totally different answers depending on what your reference profiles are. So that is the aspect of measuring the microbiome, which usually people try to ignore. On why? Because it is painful. It's absolutely painful if you're expecting things to be cut and dry and simple. Okay, now let's take a look at patterns for long COVID. When I set up my citizen science site, I allow people to upload from any lab which I could possibly get data from, and also over time added something like the ability for them to do self-declaration of symptoms they have. So it's not a formal medical diagnosis always. It is just as the symptoms they have, just as the conditions they believe they have, even though it may not be confirmed by an MD. My training is in statistics, mathematics, work professionally as that. So I went and looked at the data, and the data is actually available for anybody with statistical skills. You can just download all the data, which this data is coming from, and test things yourself. So when we look at, in this case, 1,300 samples, most of them from 3 labs, Thrive or Ombre, now they rename themselves Biome and Ubiome, which has gone bye-bye, and you look for associations, and what you find is that there's no bacteria common. What bacteria you get associated with long COVID will depend on which lab you use, and you get different combinations from different labs. In other words, it is wild cause. It is a wild west shootout. So if you find a study saying that this is the key bacteria for long COVID, and the lab you use is a different lab, it won't show up, or it will not be significant. So you'll be chasing ghosts all over the place. This is one of the first things and one of the first problems. However, I realized something very important. That is, bacteria produces enzymes, which produces compounds, and they consume compounds too, which means that we don't get bacteria association. But let's go on and look at the enzymes, and let's look at the compounds involved, which meant doing a little bit of fun work and having to import a large amount of data from the Kyoto Encyclopedia of Genes and Genomics, and a lot of data crunching. So having done the data crunching, I went and I looked with identical same math to compounds. And then we hit something which blew me away. It what I was hoping for in one sense, but not where I was wanting it. It was in terms of the compounds being produced. And we have, for example, we have all 3 labs for processing it. When I counted out the bacteria which produces this particular compound, we all had a relatively low amount for all 3 of them. Another one, which we have 2 agreement. Another one, we have 2 agreement. Here we have a singleton. But the thing is, when we go down and look at the compound levels, we get a whopping big agreement between different labs. So somehow going from the data to bacteria identification up through KIG and coming back out with compound ends up finding the association. So it's not a direct A to B. It is the bacteria that's causing it. It is what the bacteria is producing. And here, the funny is that the misidentification of bacteria probably is actually doesn't hide the association with the compound. So now we end up with absolutely beautiful, strong associations. And these are less than p.001, or many of them are 0.0001. So you're talking about extremely strong associations. So that was one of my research revelations, and it is sort of how to say it, gets you thinking. And the first thing I did was saying, wait a minute, probiotics are bacteria too, and I can from those bacteria determine who is consuming or who is producing the problematic compound. So I went through, I did that, and voila, I now find a list of 4 particular bacteria used in probiotics, which are adding in the bacteria with the compound which people with chronic fatigue are low in. Beautiful. Those are the ones you take. But more importantly, I looked at the ones which are consuming the compound, the ones which are likely making, to take them will likely make the long COVID worse. And voila, we see something are major consumers of what people are low in. And the numbers here is simply how many of the compounds are involved. In this case, we have 112 compounds being sucked up by Akkermansia, which means that it's probably not a good choice. So later we'll see how we can actually do that by specific compounds. But at the moment, at overall long COVID general level, this is what we end up getting. Now, we go on and we look at the next level, which is looking at probability and fuzzy logic. And this is where we get into my world, not the medical world. It goes the world of operations research, statistics, artificial intelligence. And I've taught artificial intelligence for starting about 30 years ago. I've worked professionally doing that for many firms, including Microsoft, Amazon, Verizon, etc. So this is my turf. I may not know MDs, medical treatments, etc., but I do know the world of artificial intelligence. And to solve this problem, it needs to be a merger of the two. You need to have a person who understands both, or a team of people who understands both and can learn to communicate. So I encourage people to try replicating their work with themselves, with their own thing, but you will have challenges finding things, especially the pay scale of people with the right AI skills. They are in hot demand now, which means you are going to be paying an arm and a leg for them. Okay, so let's look at the stumbling blocks. One is we really don't know what bacteria are there according to the sample. The sample says this is What I think is there according to the AI reference set I'm using, but we don't know if that's the actual ones that are there. Worse than that, when we go over into studies saying wormwood decreases wormwood increases bifidobacterium, we have a problem. We don't know if the studies are correctly identifying the bacteria as being bifidobacterium. It may have been a fluke of how their AI worked, that's the name that it was given to it, and was something else that was actually being done. Perhaps a unspecified bacteria was the one which they misidentified as being bifidobacterium. We do have extremely strong association to compound production. Here's where one of the problems come. 99% of these compounds are not available as supplements. If they were, hey, treatment becomes trivial. Just give the person what they're low in, and that will probably compensate the body, and the body will behave better. Now, we now enter my space, where if you go blank, don't worry, I expect you. It's using operations research concepts, which are basically applying mathematics to real world problem, with the real world problems often being very, very poorly defined. A classic example is World War II. The British Air Force was trying to improve survival rate of aircraft coming on bombing rates over Germany. They came back, and the planes that came back, they looked at all the bullet holes and said, okay, what we need to do is put extra armor where all the bullet holes are, or at least where the bullet holes are, and there's critical components behind there to do it. They did it, and it didn't make much difference. Then the operations research person came along and said, no, you have it backwards. Where you want to put extra armor is where there are no bullet holes, because where there are bullet holes at that spot, the plane doesn't come back. So they tried that. They put in extra armor where there were no bullet holes on the planes that came back, and lo and behold, more planes came back. Often it is looking at the data in an obtuse way, which operation research drills into people, because nothing is precise in the real world, and you have to, I hate to say it, but you have to fly by the seat of your pants, sometimes go off observational guts, which cannot be proven, which are fuzzy, but you get good results. And the good results are better than waiting for results that is 50 years of research later. So what we do in terms of some concept is, the more studies that report a particular shift, the better the odds of that shift being in reality. Why? Because each study is probably using a different AI to determination. So there is a convergence of the bacteria and the shift towards being it. So it's so depending on the numbers that report the same result, the more it reports, the more likely it is likely to apply for your sample. So in other words, we have to do odds calculation of the probability. In some cases, you get 8 saying it increases, 2 saying it decreases, and you may end up thereby saying you have 80% chance, 8 out of a grand total of 10, or you could do a 2-to-8 ratio and do it as a 75% chance. Many, many ways of slicing and dicing the numbers. And the next thing we hit is the studies often will do something like report on a family shift. Doesn't say if a genus shift. So what we end up doing is we have to do some more calculating odds. If the odds of the genus being shifted is 0.8, and we now of a family being shifted is 0.8, and now we look at the genus and we don't have any other information, we say, okay, the odds of it being shifted from this particular substance is, well, let's say half the odds, 0.4, or even a quarter of the odds, 0.2. So we end up having to do inference to get probabilities, because our source data is sparse. It is not complete. They will often report whatever level they measure at, and if they're measuring only at the family level, then we only have family information. We can say, well, we have to have exact match, which is fine. I've seen one group try that, and they quickly discover that they end up with 1 or 2 studies, period, and that's it, because the exact match is a bridge too far. The other thing that is done using the operation is we use something called a mixed integer programming problem, which is a mathematical way. So we create a gigantic Excel spreadsheet with all the bacteria down one. Across the top is all the substances to modify the bacteria. So you may have 8,000 bacteria down one side, or often it's 200 to 200 across the top. We have all existing, at the moment, 1,800 things. So we have a spreadsheet with 1,800 by, let's say, 100 or 18,000 individual cells, and we have to calculate the probability of each one of those cells, and then we have to figure out which value at the top is going to end up having the best overall value. And there's more mathematics involved, which I will not go into because I'm already probably well over your head. So basically that is what we are doing. We are using probability and fuzzy logic and inference to bridge this horrible gap of not having precise knowledge. And getting that precise knowledge is unlikely to happen within a decade or even 4 decades, by which time most of your patients will be dead, either from the disease or in many cases, unfortunately, from suicide. Okay, so let's go and look at the problems identifying bacteria of concern. The K compound approach uses all bacteria in report. So we know that this compound overall isn't producing enough. And we can calculate that from any source where we have detailed microbiome sample and we have reference sets for the fact that, hey, we have 3 different labs all reporting this particular compound is low, means that we can probably safely take that inference and apply it to a different lab source. But we need to know information about the reference set for the lab source in terms of the K compounds being produced. If we have that, we can proceed. Now, getting that from many of the labs is going to be a challenge. Believe me, I've heard enough protests coming back about this issue. We could turn around and say, okay, let's look at the K compound we are short of and go to the bacteria to produce it. Well, I went over to K and looked at one of the compounds, clicked it, and take a look at the bacteria that produces it. And as you can see, we have this case more than 3,000. We have 8,700 bacteria which are involved in either producing or consuming this one particular compound, which is significant. In other words, you could start working that way, but you could run into a problem of explosion of data, a factorial problem. Using bacteria identifying publisher has unreliable identification because different use languages, different words. The labs you use may not be using the same AI as study. In fact, it's extremely unlikely that they'll be used in the same study, the same AI method, the same method of doing pattern matching and weighing of the pattern matching. So you're getting a good idea for the happiness I had to sort through. Okay, so controlling the fuzz. So what we want to do is we want to use a bacteria. We want to use a bacteria naming AI to match the AI used for the pattern. In other words, your patient sample should come from the same eye that we determine the pattern matching from. Why? Because whatever it happens to be, we have the matching pattern. And we have the pattern being statistically significant. MP has patterns for biomocyte, ombre, and ubiome. Ubiome, unfortunately, is no longer in business. So you only have 2 choices, biomocyte or ombre, which used to be known as Thrive. Biomocyte is my recommended preference because we have the largest number of samples for it, and we have the largest growth rate of samples for it. In other words, it will give you the best results as long as people keep contributing, and they are doing it on a daily basis. Believe me, there's a lot of flow coming from my site simply because people, by word of mouth, have found that my suggestions for biome site data help them so much that they're telling their friends, which means it just cascades and cascades. So the result is we have a very happy feedback use. The fact that the microbiome site is free for individual use is actually contributes to it, so that people, they've already paid $200 for their biome site or whatever the going price is, and now they get just lovely bit of extra suggestions for free. And why is it free? Because I know my first step is getting the data to work from. Now that I have the data to work from, I can develop things, and I can develop a clinical version of it for if a clinic wants to license it. So by the moment, the free site gives me data, which allows me to develop the algorithms, and then I simply do a give back to the community that provides me the data, saying, hey, here it is. You can work with it. You can better your own health, and byproduct is everybody benefits. So basically, I wish I could say other labs give even better result in terms of the data accuracy, but without the data for pattern identification, we go nowhere with it. They give you data which will generally lead you nowhere, because you cannot use the bacteria identified reliably with their results. Simply you can't, because the labs are reporting it are not using the same process, and the suggestions of things that will alter it are not using the same one, which means they basically have lemons to watermelons to rutabaga comparisons, which is probably a very apt description. So what we end up doing is reusing bacteria as a reasonable proxy for compounds. I'm just going to move myself a little bit aside, which means that we identify the bacteria, and then from the bacteria, we assume that it will somehow mimic the compounds. Not that they are the bacteria associated, but we are going up the keg route and then coming down the other side using that. So we simply weight the bacteria shift we identify as significant. We go and we may backtrack into what the bacteria which are identified consumes to produce these compounds, and then add an extra weighing when we calculate out the weight to be given to each bacteria to compensate for that, so that we have not only the shift, we also have how much it contributes to the compound shifts. And the sweet thing is this: we can get the compounds of concerns can be computed on a person-by-person basis and applied. In other words, we're not dealing with general. We're talking about literally individualized medicine and suggestions, not you have a non-COVID diagnosis, therefore you should do this. No, we are working on the individual microbiome sample, and we are having to do it through collected samples from the same microbiome testing facilities and making use of people's self-declared symptoms there. But the sweet thing is we can holistically address multiple symptoms at a time. You can go and click out all the items which a person has and get suggestions seeking in all the compound shifts which are significant for those particular symptoms and the bacteria there, and voila, you end up with suggestions coming out at the other end. Suggestions are not perfect, but in terms of probability, they do a very good job in terms of experience of people using it. And as you will see, making use of cross-validation against published literature that helps against the condition, they come up with 90% agreement, which is, in terms of artificial intelligence, fantastic for the medical area. Okay, now, next we go to the demo. We don't go arrogantly and say, this is the way we calculate how suggestions should be done. No, we looked at the experts out there, how they do it. We have looked at feedback from people how they want things to do it. And what we've done is we have picked the best methodology, which we think, and we do multiple algorithms to get suggestions back. And then we use a Monte Carlo model to take, okay, here are 4 different ways of calculating what we want to change. Here's the suggestions from it. And tell me which one everybody agrees about. Why? Because if everybody agrees about it, you probably, to borrow expression, could do no harm by doing these suggestions, because depending on whichever way you want to go about it, it still comes out being a suggestion. So you can ignore one method or go to a different method. It still comes out to being a top suggestion. Items agree most often are probably the most likely to have. So we simply say, okay, everybody agrees on this one, go for it. Everyone agrees with that one, go for it. Oh, this one is half people agree, half of the people say don't do it. Let's just not bother with it. Or this one, everybody said we should avoid it, so tell them they shouldn't have high-fat meals. Simple as that. And the algorithm does produce some limited cross-validation for some conditions, and cross-validation requires PubMed studies to be done on the condition, showing what the result is from trying things. So it is slightly limited. As you can see, you can filter suggestions to a particular group of things. For example, you want to include antibiotics, antivirals. And if we have data on it, you will include that and we'll get results. Common or over-the-counter supplements, things such as statins, etc. will show up there. Drugs or non-drugs. Some things are drugs in some countries, some things are not drugs in other countries. Generally, it's designed worldwide, so you get a hodgepodge, minerals, vitamins, sugars. And then we also say, okay, here are commercial probiotic mixture. What are the odds of them helping? Again, keyword is odds. So at this point in time, I'm going to stop and flip over to the demo site. Hi, this is the microbiome prescription. One after you log in, it now goes to a new simplified UI. And why? Because the old one kept growing and growing organically and end up, as with any organism, became more and more complicated as it grew. So this is a simple one, which for most MDs treating long COVID is likely going to be sufficient. So we go in and you see we have levels of things here. The novice level, you pick your sample, you click, get suggestions, you select what you want, and you're off and you're running. Nice and simple. Quick example. Click here. There's a lot of calculations done. Believe me, there's a lot of calculations done. And we should momentarily get suggestion. Oh, got a bug there. I know what I have to do to fix it. But now you get suggestions of things to take. The weight is the relatively, factoring everything, higher the weight, the better it is. Negative rate is things that should be avoided, etc. So that is the basically novice beginner. Okay, now next let's go over to PubMed, and now PubMed you go down and where we have data extracted showing bacteria shift from PubMed, we go down there, and somewhere in there. Okay, couple quick things. We sort it by where we have the most matches to PubMed patterns, which basically tries to do it again. Let's suppose we do D, lactic acidosis, one form of brain fog. Brain fog is common with chronic D, and we can go and just click get suggestions. And again, we wait for a few seconds. And this time the bacteria shows up as it should, and you see the bacteria which was identified with brain fog, and it's known that most of the brain fog is caused by D-lactic acidosis. So the fact that we have a ton of lactobacillus or lactobacilli listed as being high is no surprise. And then down below we have suggestions of how to help things and what not to take, things which would actually probably cause those bacteria to increase. In other words, making brain fog worse. So that is a nice, simple example of using PubMed studies, and you've got a whole ton of them. And notice these are checkbox, so you can go in and toss in as many as you want to do that one. For example, let's see, psoriasis, ME/CFS without IBS, and now we can go and get suggestions again. And you notice spinning up here, and now we see the bacteria selected, 27 of them, and we'll get a modified suggestion list, and that's looking at all the bacteria at one time and whether or not they're high or low. And there we have the information, and if you click on something here, it'll go over there. And notice we are slowly updating our site to use the scientific name as well as the common name, just for improved clarity, mainly for people worldwide, because sometimes they don't know the American or the English common name, but they do know the scientific name, or in some cases like oh, never mind. So basically this is going there, and also if you see these curly brackets, it means that there being a recent, as in the last month or so, complete review of PubMed for everything dealing with it. For example, lactose is on my to-do list, but a whole bunch of other things are already there. We have here lard, which there, and you notice that over top we end up having tooltips giving more information about it, different language, where it comes from, etc. So just general information. So let's go back to the home page. So that is there. Now let's go over to with symptoms. And we'll go here, and this is blank. And why is it? We do not have any association. Foreign, although it's a shotgun, it produces far more detailed bacteria information. Often 8,000 different bacteria taxons are given, so it's sweet, but we don't have enough annotated samples from foreign to get statistically significant relationship. So instead of that, let's go over to one of our favorites. Let's take a look over to Biome site. And there we have, for example, people who self-declare to have Epstein-Barr are often chronic fatigue people, because that's often an alternative name for chronic fatigue is chronic Epstein-Barr. Some people with chronic Lyme are there. We have the official diagnosis there. So we can go and select as many of them as we want. We can go over there and we can select something like antibiotics. And now we just go and do click suggestions. And there we have, again, everything selected. There are 12 things which we have selected which are significant. And then we get what we should be taking according to what type it is. And over here we have things you should be avoiding. And you notice that we respect the limits for how many you do. If one more there, but 30 generally is, how should I say, saturation point of those suggestions you have come back. You may want to exclude certain things for one reason or another. For example, allergies, or a person who has histamine issues, or in some cases like here, just a particular probiotic species which may not be available. We should, at this point in time, flip back and go to the bottom, include commercial probiotic species, and let's see what happens there. And now down on the page, here we have lists of probiotics and their weight. And we also say how many species are in it, 4, 3. Some cases like this one here, which is pretty high, it's a single species probiotic. And if you click here, you get information as to where it comes from there, and get a whole bunch of information there. But let's just go back here. And so that's how we do it. Now, each time you do one for the beginner, it gets rid of all the data. But if you want to combine suggestions, for example, you want to do with symptoms, it goes back here. And now what we do is we go and check these, which are the same ones we used before. And what we do is we go and get suggestions. So we go back on what we just did. But now if you go back to the home page and do a refresh, it will say we have 9 Monte Carlo wrens available. That means we can go over and look at the aggregation of everything and see where there is agreement using different algorithms. So let's just click there and go over here. And there we have it. And we have, how to say it, we have 485 possible substances. And for example, you can go here and suggest, okay, let's click on vitamins. And what we have is 9 of those 9 runs we have done. Everybody says take. 8 says take. 1 has no opinion. We have 7, 1. We have 2, 0. So although 2 says take it, there's not a lot of agreement on it. We have 5. Or we could do it simply by sorting here. 9, 8, 7 there. We could get rid of these. And now we see everything. So we can see what the absolute top suggestions are in there. So it's basically slice and dice. You can go and do things, for example, let's go to antibiotics. We have no antibiotics are suggested from the list. Probably because we never included that in the list of suggestions. And let's go back and let's do that again and get suggestions. And so we have there, and actually don't see, oh, we do have, we have some, where is it? Oh, no. I need to check. Oh, there we are. We do have an antibiotic in the list there. So if you go back to this page and do a refresh on it, we see we're up to 13. If we want to go over to there, and now we want to go over and toss in, notice that chronic fatigue syndrome is high. And actually, in this case, in 2019, I was dealing with a relapse of chronic fatigue one. So the fact that it shows up, and I was having IBS, and I was having multiple chemical sensitivity at that point in time. So I just click here, and we'll get suggestions. And again, I got a bug here I need to fix. And there we have the suggestions here. And eating lots of rye was one of the things which I did then. I kept doing it there. Neem I use often. Cranberry flower. There are things like Kefir is unfortunately a probiotic which is available only in Italy, which is problematic there. And so we can go back, and now if we go back to actual consensus and do an update here, we see we have all the suggestions from all the things all combined into one massive table, and you can go and work from there, things to agree or disagree. So that basically is this magical page which gives you a whopping big hunk of things, gives you a bunch of individual information almost ad absurdum. But the consensus page allows you to determine what you want to absolutely go best. Now, the one last thing I want to show is you have to unfortunately go to the old UI. And the old UI is loaded with more information than you really want to digest. Believe me, you don't. Then you want to go over to changing biome. And now we have the cross-validated suggestion. Now I'll go down here and I'll mark it as long COVID. MECFs will give you chronic fatigue syndrome could be instead. I like to do that with brain fog, and autoimmune irritable bowel syndrome. Just there, and now I do a get report. Now this one does take a fair amount of time, but you will see why. Okay, so up the top we have suggestions, which comes from some of the free AIs out there of things to take. So it's there and gives you information about diagnosis, what it means, basically just background information. Again, it was written mainly for the common user to get some information. But then we have what the significant bacteria shifts are, which are of concern. So these are what we are targeting it. And each one, if you go down here and click there, it will take you down to the bottom to identify why we picked it. In this case, you can see it comes because of IBS. And if you go back to the top, we have all of the bacteria identified. Hence, here is why we was selected. So we only select things which are identified in PubMed studies. And then we do suggestions of things to take. And here we do have the same thing. We have footnotes, links to footnotes, or direct to pages elsewhere. Let's do this one for 115. Oh, it's there. Some of the higher numbers don't. So it goes down and shows you the where it was. Okay. So it basically purpose is to give you all the information for there. Then it goes and gives you the name as well as alternative names for things. We must admit, we do some aggregation. We don't deal with each type of iron supplement, iron sulfate, one case, iron citrates, and another, etc. We group them in groups, mainly because we have very, very sparse data on them individually. So fuzzy logic, fuzzy aggregation is a reality, and by it, we do get good results. And if we go strict, we can do it, but people who have tried going strict has had less satisfactory results per mile, or have no results at all. So we have the list there of the name, which is given about alternative names, etc. And then we have for every single bacteria we are targeting, we have which probiotic or which substance is used to modify it, and then to where the PubMed study that we are using coming from. Let's take a look at this one, 378, if fingers crossed. If we don't have any short list of references to the bottom, short 150 items often, the hyperlink takes us directly to the studies for people to read themselves. So in other words, everything is, how should I say it, well documented as to data sources. Model of microbiome prescription is open data source and open data. So we have there, and we have everything spelled out in beautiful detail with every bit of data and where it's coming from. I don't expect many MDs to make use of it, but it's there if somebody wants to do some double checking on things. Or if you see something which, I never knew that. Where's that information coming from? Click, read, and expand your knowledge base. So that goes on in some cases for pages. Additional suggestions is very similar to, let's go back up. I didn't explain cross-validate. Cross-validate means that there is a study showing for one of the conditions that this particular antibiotic helps the condition, or this particular thing helps one of the conditions done, or NAC helps one of the conditions done, or here, this one particularly. Let's go over and take a look at it at 84, and there we have it. Low dosage. Here's a study saying, hey, there it is, and actually my home province, British Columbia, and there you can see, yes, that substance helps, and that is a substance which the microbiome analysis suggested, which, in other words, it is sweet. So cross-validated, everything on this list has documentation that it helps one of the conditions selected. In other words, how much stronger can you get a recommendation for it? Then it will help the microbiome to correct the shifts which are being identified from PubMed studies, and the substance being computed by our magical AI system or expert system has been documented to help the condition. And when we have done that, we find that we are running about 90% agreement or higher. In other words, these suggestions are probably 90% likely to help the patient, which is a pretty high odds, much better than you usually will get if you say, okay, let's try this or let's try that and see, which is basically random experimentation, and you have a 50-50 or even less odds of it actually helping. Here, we're trying to push the odds up to 90% or higher. Okay, so now that I finished explaining cross-validation, here are additional suggestions, which is basically the same way as above, and we limit it to 30. And these are things which we don't have studies being done saying that this helps. For example, many of these items would ideally be ones for a clinical studies with, for example, chronic fatigue syndrome, saying, hey, nobody has studied NIM being used for chronic fatigue syndrome, and it matches the profile, so why not do a clinical study and publish a paper showing that NIM does help, in which case probably 2 months or a month after it gets published, that paper will be cited, since this data is habitually being updated. So that's there, and now we get a little bit of reference, and if we have just 173 references listed, and as you can see, we have probably 400, 500, 600 references have been referred to, 692 here, 1,300 references are being cited. So you have a, obscenely, I think the word obscene applies here, well-researched set of information coming to you. So that's the end of the demo. Now, let's do a recap for practicality. The practicality is all the magic artificial intelligence behind it, all of the calculations, probability, etc. You don't have to do. Unless, of course, you want to have your own team do it, in which case go to it. Basically, all you have to do is identify the symptoms, give it the microbiome profile, and then proceed to play around, and then see the results and make a judgment call, which is where your professionalism should come in as to what to do. Remember, it goes and ranks things, see how often the suggestions come up suggesting one thing, how often it doesn't, and work from there. The purpose of the system, given how awful, literally awful the data is to try to improve the odds significantly. And so far to date, the improvement of the odds has literally exceeded my expectations. People who have done repeated samples for me to do and share publicly, every single time there was subjective improvement of symptoms and objective improvement of the microbiome measures. And that actually surprised me that just keeps going on. Apart from the one case where somebody called COVID again, and then things regressed a bit, but not that much. And then the following one, he was even better than before. So I tend to have good confidence in it, that it actually works better than random trial and error, which tends to be the fallback position for health practitioners when they don't have a proven answer. We don't have a proven answer. We have awkward, messy, painful data. But fortunately, the nature of the data is one which, because my operations research and creativity, know how to deal with. And statistical skills knows how to deal with it and build a working model which some people may find a little bit not quite bizarre, but beyond them, because I'm doing all sorts of fun things in order to get the model to work. Catches, the model seems to work. All you have to do is sample what scope you want to do, try it, try different ways to hard content, and then take a look at the final result and prioritize your suggestions and treatment of the patients. Okay, so let's quickly finish up. Okay, to me, the journey is just starting in terms of the microbiome. Why? Because there's still a lot of learning. Over the last 5 years of working with this data pretty heavily every day, literally every day, and most weekends, I keep getting new insights on how things can be done, how things can be better, how we can improve the odds. The odds are good right now. As I said, cross-validation seems to be hitting 90% or higher, in which case, as an AI engineer, I'm extremely happy, but I think we still have some distance to go. So my name is Dare. You can email me. I have a Master of Science, Operation Research and Statistics, and my master's topic was dealing in the medical area. So this area is not unfamiliar with me. You can phone me if you want, leave a message. I have a Google call screening, so I don't have to deal with so much spam. So if you call, please leave a message, callback number. I'll give you a call back. Websites are there, Microbiome Prescription. I have a blog which goes into a whole bunch of technical details, etc. About 250, 300 posts there. Also a YouTube channel, and also have my old classic chronic fatigue syndrome website, which predates all my work with the microbiome. And in fact, it was working there that caused me to work with the microbiome. But that site dates back a long time, and it's rich there and all very specific to chronic fatigue syndrome. And it is generally very well done in terms of data sources being documented. And I tend to want to keep to the facts are not inferences or speculation. So that is my temperament, which some people love and other people wish I would speculate more. Nah, not my temperament. Okay, at this point in time, we are past an hour. I've got a cup of coffee here, which is getting cold. If you find the site useful, feel free to make a donation to the running costs, etc. If you want to start for individual MDs to use the site for their patients on ad hoc basis, I have no problem with. Just be aware it's not HIPAA and personal health information compliant, and that was literally by design. It's pretty close to it, but I have declared it not to be, to discourage commercial use of it by MDs, but individual MDs I have no problem with. And feel free to donate to cover operating costs, or as a way of saying thank you, buy me a coffee, PayPal, whatever. And if you're interested in a HIPAA compliant licensed version, etc., 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 for your probably reasonably large size medical group, then contact me and we'll see what we can do. The HIPAA compliant adds another level of complexity which has no immediate benefits. What I'm interested in, which is solving the microbiome issue, and it is a rich area, and not just for long COVID, but for a ton of other conditions. Very, very simple recent example, which is I used it personally in terms of picking the right probiotics to result in weight loss. The information is out there. We know what causes obesity, etc. And the net result is over the last year or so, I have lost about 40 pounds, 20 kilograms, by just taking the right probiotic in sufficient dosage. Also changed my appetite, my taste, etc. And no doubt, just sort of getting the right probiotics, you alter the gut bacteria the right way, and voila, things happen with very little pain. Okay, I'll shut up, or else I'll just keep droning on.